Hi, my name is Tommy and this is the Semaphore channel. Since we open source Semaphore with our community edition, or CE for short, I really wanted to pit Jenkins, which is the most popular open source continuous integration platform, against Semaphore. The goal of this video is not to find the best CI platform, but which one fits best for you or your company or your team. For that, I'm going to compare Jenkins and Semaphore CE on these categories: hardware, what infrastructure we need to run the CI; installation and setup, how easy it is to install and set up for the first time; initial setup and pipeline creation, how easy it is to use the CI and create pipelines; redundancy, how resilient your platform is; the feature set, scalability and performance, how easy it is to scale up the CI as your project grows; and maintenance, how much effort it takes to maintain the CI over time. Full disclosure, I work for Semaphore, so I'm naturally biased. I will try my best to be as objective as I can. I will give you a comparison on all these things, all these categories I just mentioned. Hopefully, after you see the comparison, you can decide for yourself which solution is best for you. Maybe Semaphore is the right solution for you, maybe it's not. But you don't have to take my word. You can try Semaphore for free. You can install the CE edition in any spare machine you have. You can also try the cloud version for free with all the features with no cost. Then it's up to you to decide which solution is best for you. So to start, let's begin with hardware requirements. So Jenkins is quite modest in its hardware requirements. It measures its requirements by the number of jobs and agents that are connected to the controller. It requires a minimum of 4 megabytes of memory, but it recommends at least 4 gigabytes of RAM. For a big instance, you might require up to 70 gigabytes. On the CPU side, Jenkins recommends one CPU core per 100 configured jobs, so it will depend on the amount of work you usually have. Semaphore requires at a minimum for the control plane 16 gigabytes of RAM and 8 CPUs at least. That's not a huge machine, but certainly more than your average Jenkins requirements. On the category of hardware requirement, Jenkins has an edge. It requires less hardware, less resources to run, so that's a point for Jenkins. Now let's discuss what are the requirements to install Jenkins and Semaphore. Semaphore CE requires a public address and a domain or a subdomain. You need also a TLS certificate for that domain. Jenkins, on the other hand, can run fully inside a firewall and doesn't require any of these, doesn't require a public IP address or a domain. You can run Jenkins with Docker, install it as a package, and run it on your server. So overall, I think Jenkins has another point here because it needs less things for the installation. Now let's do the initial setup, starting from a brand new installation. So upon initial login, what things do we need to do? On Jenkins, we need to install some essential plugins, then go to GitHub, create the GitHub app, and then add all these credentials to Jenkins so it can connect. So the procedure is quite complicated. On Semaphore, on the other hand, linking your CI server with GitHub, Bitbucket, or GitLab, it's only a few clicks, a few screens, and it's pretty painless. So on the setup category, I think Semaphore provides a better experience. It's friendlier, smoother. The integration is just a few clicks, and once you do it, it works. It just works. There's no need to install any plugins. An important part of setting your CI instance is controlling who and how people can access your server, what they can do on it. So let's see how each platform does on this category. Adding users is very simple in Jenkins, but to control their access, you need to either install the role strategy plugin if you want role-based access controls, or grant individual permissions to projects or the instance. Semaphore, on the other hand, comes built in with role-based access control, so adding users and controlling their permission is as simple as assigning roles. I think Jenkins' approach gives you more options, but at the same time, it's more complex. Semaphore provides very straightforward user management. It's that simple, and also there's no plugin requirement. To compare how to create projects and set up the pipelines. Creating a project on Jenkins is a bit daunting. There's a lot of options. We are greeted with all these boxes to check and options upon options. You need to know what you're doing, and for beginners, it might take a while to understand what boxes to check. I'm not an expert on Jenkins. It's been a while since I used it, and it took me quite a bit of time to set up my first project. When we create the project, we have a lot of options to create the pipelines. We can add commands using forms, but it's not very flexible. The most flexible way I've found to set up your pipeline is to use a Jenkins file. Jenkins uses Groovy as the syntax to define the pipeline, so we have that added learning curve of writing the Jenkins files correctly. For example, if I want to run my jobs inside a Docker container, I need to configure the agent like this. Or if I want to use different containers for different stages, I need to set up the agent on each of these stages. On Semaphore, we have the workflow editor. This allows us to create a pipeline visually. We can create blocks, connect them, so we can create a workflow very visually, very easily. Inside block, there's jobs. Each line is a command that runs in a bash session for that job. When it comes to defining and creating your pipeline, I think it's fair to say Semaphore has a big edge on this. It's more friendly to use, it's intuitive, and there's no need to learn a new syntax just to define your pipeline. Redundancy or resiliency. CI is important when it comes to being productive as a developer, and when the platform is down, your work is also slowed down. So with this, I mean, if a service goes down or if the network goes down, can you still work? On Jenkins, redundancy for the controller is not built in. You can sort of get some redundancy by having an active passive strategy. This means you have two servers. One is up and active, and the other is on standby. So if the active node goes down, the other one can pick up the work. Semaphore, on the other hand, if you run Semaphore on a Kubernetes cluster, you get all the benefits on redundancy that Kubernetes brings to the table. You get all the redundancy and resilience that the platform gives. If you don't need the redundancy, you can run Semaphore on a single Linux machine, and in that case, when the machine goes down, your CI goes down. So it's up to you. Overall, I would say Semaphore has greater potential for redundancy and resiliency, especially if you run it on a Kubernetes cluster. So let's do a quick comparison of a few features that I think are must when it comes to any CI platform. First, caching provides a way to save logs, artifact dependencies that makes your CI faster because you don't need to re-download the dependencies each time the workflow runs. On Jenkins, we have to install the job catcher plugin and add it to the stages we want to cache, where we download our gems for this Ruby on Rails project. Since dependencies tend to change slowly compared to how many workflows we run every day, it makes sense to cache these files. Semaphore, on the other hand, provides a built-in cache and a command line tool called cache that can auto-detect your package manager and automatically store and restore the gems. In this case, it supports the most popular package managers, and if yours is not supported, you can still use the cache with additional arguments. Next up is monorepo support. The problem with monorepos and CI is that if I make a small change in one of these projects, all tests across all projects inside that repo will run, which is wasteful and takes time and resources. We want to be able to only run tests or jobs that are related to a particular commit, to a particular project in the monorepo. On Jenkins, there are a few hacks you can implement using multi-branch pipelines, but it requires a lot of effort and maintenance to support. On Semaphore, monorepos are supported natively using change-in conditions. We declare under which condition a job can run or be skipped. The change-in condition is a directive that scans the commit history and see which file had changed since the last commit, and it can figure out if a job needs to run or not. Any features that makes easy to visualize the test performance. Both Jenkins and Semaphore support JUnit reports as the source of truth. In Jenkins, we only need to add the JUnit keyword at any stages that generate a JUnit report. Once we add this, we get the history graph with the success as failures of every run, and we can see the report on the latest run. Semaphore also comes with a test tab. It also supports the JUnit format. This dashboard aggregates data from all your test runs across all your CIs. We can filter our tests with categories, sort them by success, by failure, by runtime. This allows us to find what tests are failing more frequently and what tests are taking more time to run on average to identify slow tests. We can also open a test and see its output. Next up, we have notifications. This means any way to notify, maybe using Slack or Discord, any other service, when an event happens on the CI. Jenkins only supports notifications via plugins. For example, we need the Slack notification plugins if we want to send notifications about our builds to a Slack channel. Semaphore supports out-of-the-box Slack notification, no plugin needed. It's very easy to set up. We can also send notifications using webhooks. So any service that supports webhooks like Discord, Zapier, or any other product, it's also supported. We can send notification to these services. With scalability, I mean how easy it is to grow the capacity of our CI. We don't want the CI to be a bottleneck for development. On Jenkins, we need to add nodes, worker nodes that connect to the control server, add SSH credentials so the controller node connects to the worker node and spin up jobs. Semaphore, on the other hand, if we are running on a Kubernetes cluster, we can grow this cluster, we can add more nodes, and this will automatically increase the capacity without having to change anything on Semaphore. If we are using a single node as a controller for Semaphore, then the way to add capacity is to add self-hosted agents, which are basically the same as worker nodes. The node connects to the controller plane and requests jobs to run. We even ship out the scaler component for AWS. That's another way to have extra capacity on demand. So when it comes to scalability, Semaphore has been built to be cloud native. It was born as a cloud platform serving thousands of organizations. So I think it's on a different scale, on a different level as Jenkins, and we can even replace several Jenkins instances with that single community edition server as long as we have there enough resources, a big enough cluster. So on scalability and performance, Semaphore has a big advantage. Parallelization is a very important part of scalability, is the ability to run jobs in parallel. The more jobs we can run in parallel, the faster the CI runs. So it's really important. I want to test how easy it is to run jobs in parallel in Semaphore versus Jenkins. So on Jenkins, we use the parallel keyword in our Jenkins files. This runs stages concurrently. One thing to keep in mind that kind of tripped me was that even when we run things in parallel, they run on the same environment. For example, I was running my integration test in a Docker container, and I had a problem with the db setup command. When they ran in parallel, they were running on the same container, so one of these jobs failed. The solution was to put the setup on a previous stage and then run the integration test in parallel. On Semaphore, parallelization is built in and is the default. Every job that lives on the same block runs in parallel. We spin up a fresh Docker container for each job, and we can force to run jobs serially by declaring dependencies. So parallelization is the default in Semaphore, and it's easier to achieve. Semaphore has the potential to be much faster and easier to parallelize by default. Someone has to manage your CI instance, maintain it, and in this category I want to estimate how much effort it takes to maintain Jenkins and Semaphore. Ways of thinking about maintenance: on one side we have the infrastructure, and this highly depends on your setup. Both Jenkins and Semaphore require you to maintain your servers, your agents. If you are running a Kubernetes cluster, you need to maintain that too. As for the platform itself, I think Jenkins requires more effort to maintain because it has this plugin catalog. Many of these plugins are maintained by the community, so if a critical plugin breaks, you might need to roll back, find an alternative, or wait for a fix. On Semaphore, the maintenance of the platform is very simple. There's really nothing to do. We can choose to upgrade when there are new version released, but that's all. The total maintenance effort depends on several factors, but if we are talking only about the CI platform, I think Semaphore has the lowest maintenance by a long shot. You don't really need a Semaphore expert to use Semaphore. Today, my hope is that this video has helped you to decide which CI platform is better for your needs. If you are still unsure, both Jenkins and Semaphore are free and open source, so you can try them both and decide for yourself which one works better. I will leave a link in the description to the Discord server where you can get support and ask questions, and you can leave comments below and I will do my best to answer them. I want to thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please leave us a like and subscribe, and see you on the next one.